Hunters. Life on the blockchain.
Welcome back to Bounty Hunters. It's a killer intro. I am here with zachobront, the legend. Hello, sir.
Very mysterious. I love this.
We do whatever the fuck we want on this.
Yeah.
That's how we do it on Bounty Hunters. We have 0 sponsors, by the way. Maybe we don't want them.
Yet. They're coming.
I'm actually working on my first project where I'm actually trying to develop something, and I'm actually seeing the frustrations with writing Solidity that now I know like why devs did the weird shit, because I'm doing the same kind of stuff, and I'm like, oh, stack too deep. Oh, okay, this is annoying.
Isn't it a mindfuck?
It's a pain, dude.
I used to do a little bit of dev stuff before security, and then went back to doing a little bit recently. And I'm like, oh, well, now I know everything about security. Like, now I'm going to crush it with this. Still fucking riddled with bugs. I'm like, there's just there's two different people in my head, and one of them can do security, and one of them can write code, and there's no overlap.
Yeah, dude, I was going to ask you about that, because like right now you're so deep with, Optimism. For whatever reason, you're kind of melded in with these guys.
It kind of just works it out that way. Yeah,
not
really intentionally.
You did something with OP Succinct, which I looked at it briefly, but it was like it seemed pretty simple for anyone that wants to participate. But did you code up that the output oracle? Was that you or no?
Oh yeah, the output oracle was a minor piece of it. That's just basically changing Optimism's on-chain stuff to verify a ZK proof. The hard part is, now how do you have a ZK proof?
Yeah.
So that was most of my summer last year. Was I took 3 months off from security and did the version 1 of that, of basically getting it so that Optimism blocks could be fully ZK verified on L1. And then I was kind of thinking of this as like, oh, this is like a little proof of concept. Look, we can do this. Succinct's really cool. It's magical. I don't even know ZK, and I can do this in 3 months. And they took it and ran with it and made it 1,000 times better. And now they're actually running it like live in production on chain. So it's it went farther than I expected at first.
So your background. Let's go over your background quickly. So you were, as far as I know, you were a book publisher. You were running this business about books, and now you're neck deep in code. Give me some.
It was a weird transition. So I started the publishing company. I was like maybe 23 or 24 when I started it. And so like hadn't really done anything else before, I like played around with some small things and had some jobs I didn't like, but like kind of just like immediately it took off. And so didn't really like have the thoughtful, where do I want to spend time? It was just like, holy crap, I'm running a thing that's fun and it's growing quickly and I'm all in on that. And so grew that from then for the next 6-7 years to doing, I think we were doing, we did well over 1,000 books. We were doing like hundreds of books a year. Had done some cool ones. We did David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. We did some books with Nassim Taleb, Tiffany Haddish, just like a fun lineup of authors, and company was like over 100 people. And I was getting very bored. I do very well when a company is like 0 to 10 people. And then like 10 to 30 was like, I can make this work. Like I can learn some process. And by the time it's 100, it's like, I don't know. I had this frustration of like, oh, it's not feeling as fun. And then realized it's like, I don't want the company to become more like me. It's running the way a 100-person company is supposed to. I don't fit with that. So went to my co-founder and was like, hey, here's what I need to do. I need to take a year to go deep on AI stuff. I'm going to learn. This was like end of 2019, I think. It was like GPT-2 era. And I was like, LLMs are kind of crazy. I need to go deep and understand AI stuff. I'll come back in a year and I'll build some cool AI publishing things. And he's like, all right, that sounds like a good idea. So went like this. I was totally non-technical at this point. So it was like starting to learn to code, very, very basics.
This is 2019, you said?
What was it? It was, I think end of 2019. No, you know what? It was end of 2020.
Okay.
So the year off I was taking was like end of 2020 to end of 2021. Halfway through the year, I was like, the problem is AI is also kind of boring. I like love the coding stuff so much. And now I find AI stuff a lot more interesting. At the time, my basic thought was like, what you can do with AI is amazing, but the work of AI at that point especially it's very data heavy, and it's very, I'm going to run an experiment and wait. and I need fast feedback loops. So I found it kind of like unsatisfying, and I was like, okay, here's what I'll do. I've got some months left. Let me play around with some other areas I'm interested in before I have to go back to real work. And one of those was like, oh, I'll check out some blockchain stuff. And literally one day of it, and I was like, found the answer. This is perfect. I don't know why, just like something about it just like clicked, and I was like, oh, this is the kind of like technical work I like.
And what was it? Was it you looked
it's
at a
hard to
contract
explain
or
exactly. Yeah, it's something about it being like simple code for cool output with all kinds of interesting nuances and like different use cases I hadn't considered, and that like fast feedback loop. It's like you make something and it works in a predictable way, and it can plug into other things that exist. So you've got that. I mean, that was like DeFi era, so it's like all the like building block money Lego things.
that was DeFi
together.
summer?
Yeah. And so I was kind of in this like, just like this feels like magic. What powerful things can be done simply, and the entire EVM is simple enough that I can like get down to the metal of understanding it instead of like an abstraction on top of an abstraction on top of an abstraction. So started playing with that, and the plan was like I still was in entrepreneur brain. I'm like, I'm going back to the company. Now I've had a bunch of ideas for like blockchain publishing things, and actually like went pretty far down the road with one of them. And at the last minute was just like, I'm having so much fun. Why the hell am I stopping doing this? Like the company was doing very well. I had dividends coming in. I'm like, I don't need any of this. I can just keep doing this thing that I'm having the best year ever doing. So that was kind of like the entry to blockchain stuff. Was like, okay, I told the team I'm not coming back. I'm just gonna mess around with this and see where it goes. I'm not gonna try to start a company. I just want to learn. And learning turns into reading code, turns into security, and got addicted. And here I am.
That was it. Let me gauge your IQ here. So are you the kind of guy that digs into the yellow paper and understands it, or do you need to read someone's work to interpret that for you? I'm guy number 2. Who are you?
Yeah, here's a weird thing I found with Like I think part of that is like I guess IQ, but part of that is like fluency with the language of math.
True.
And not even math like in the real like number sense, but math in the like mathematical notation sense. And so like I read that and my eyes glaze over. But if I stop and try to be both people, and I'm like, oh, first I'll be the translator, then I'll be the guy reading the translator, I can do both of those. So like I get there, but I got to be really slow because the language doesn't come naturally to me. I haven't spent enough time in like formal math stuff.
That's a good take on it. Yeah, it's true. I think that's what turns me off. I think it turns a lot of people off. And that's like, I mean,
reading some of these old AI papers, I remember facing this thing where it was like, there's this crazy formula that I'm like, what the fuck is going on with this? Like, and you know, your eyes, you want to just eyes glaze over, move on to the next thing.
Automatic.
And I'm like, well, wait, what is this actually saying? And I broke it down, whatever.
1 + 2.
And if you rewrite it in code, it's just like a double nested for loop doing like a basic addition thing on the inside. Like
no shit.
You would write it in code and be like, this is nothing, but you turn it into math and they have the benefit that it's one line. But the negative is it's incomprehensible to anyone who's not used to it.
Yeah, these guys use that to raise money. I swear to God.
It's a part of it for sure. Or to impress other professors, whatever their status game is, they use it for that.
Oh shit. And all right, so when you kicked off your blockchain career, were you doing DeFi, were you trading, or did you just jump into audits or bug hunting?
I was in the like, holy crap, I mean, when you're running a company, so much is money based. And so I was just like in heaven being able to be like, I'm earning 0 and I'm just doing whatever is most interesting most days. And I'm very lucky to have been in that position for a while. So that was like, by the time all this was done, that was like early 20. You know what? I got my years off again. That was 2019. Everything was a year earlier than I thought.
2019.
So this was like early 2021. I was getting into all that. And was like when I left, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to explore. And somewhere towards the beginning of that year, a friend of mine was like, hey, have you seen Code Arena? Security wasn't on my mind at all. You know, I'm like, I was just trying to be like, what's a Merkle tree? I'm going to build one for myself. Look, this is fun. And so he was like, oh, you check it out. And so there was like some contest going on. I was like, cool, I could spend a day on that. Like, it's an excuse to read code and think about things, sure. And found I think I found like one like not that duped medium. It was like, this paid me. That's kind of cool. Like, the money was not very significant, but I'm like, that's kind of funny. Like these are professional devs. Like I'm just learning this stuff. What am I doing finding things? And so kind of got hooked and then went on a cold streak. I think I can give analysis on it actually, because I basically got serious about it in August of that year, or maybe July of that year. And July and August got $0 payouts from basically everything I did. Like couldn't even find one more thing. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little, but close to that. And now looking back, my bar for how fast I should go was so high. I was doing a contest and being like, cool, it's like 2,000 lines of code. Like I can read 2,000 lines in a day, right? And like that was kind of like what I was thinking. And my bar for what a bug was so high. Like I was treating it kind of like I was looking for bounty crits and nothing else. And so they'd announce the results and I'd be like, oh, I noticed like half that stuff, but like I didn't think that was a bug. I just thought that was like a quirk.
Right.
And so, basically at the end of August of that year, I was like, okay, either I'm going to move on to like the next interesting thing for me to puzzle through and learn, or like I'm going to take this seriously. And kind of just had this feeling of like, my brain is meant to be good at this and I'm not doing well. And if I want to quit, I'll quit later once I'm good at it. I'm not going to quit before I've proved it to myself. So just decided to take it really seriously. And by that point, it started to happen pretty quick. I like did very well through that September, October, November, December. And by that point, I would consider myself like being
so you cut the chops on contests. That was your thing.
Totally.
And then you did private audits and then bug hunting?
For a while. So like that fall, that was when Sherlock launched bounties or launched contest and basically just did every Sherlock contest for that whole fall. And then towards the end of that period, I'd been chatting with Trust a little bit and he had an idea for a bug that he was just kind of like a little vague at that point, but was like, something could be here. And I was like, let me chase this down for you. Let's see if we can figure it out. And we found like a pretty substantial crit. It was a critical in Chainlink VRF that was like multi six figures, like pretty substantial. And so I was like, oh, bug bounties work too. I'm going to spend next year focusing all on bounties, and proceeded to spend 0 days focusing on bounties the whole year. Because just there's something about the immediacy of like the contest is happening, a private audit comes in, whatever. So that's kind of been my pattern for the past many years, is like try to squeeze in bounty stuff here and there. It seems to be best expected value of anything I do, and yet I never make time for it. So that's where
really.
Yeah,
that's interesting. And because I mean, you had a successful business. You're not the guy in the basement, trying to like needing to stack some cash. But it's more. It seems like to me, it's more because it interests you. It challenges you.
Yeah, but there also is, because I actually find the bounty work more fun and more interesting, to be like less writing of reports, more going at the pace that feels natural. So I know there's something kind of messed up in my psychology that I don't do it more. And I think it's mostly just like every single thing that comes up sounds so interesting that it's hard. It takes saying no so many times to be left in a spot where I can do bounties. And that at some point, something goes over that threshold where I say yes all the time. So it's like, I'm lucky to have a lot of cool opportunities, but I'm trying this year and have succeeded a little bit so far at blocking off weeks to really, really just say like, I'm not booking anything no matter what comes up.
That's cool. That's it's interesting hearing.
Yeah, I will say actually, like the contest thing, I push it pretty hard on people when they're starting. I know other people have different opinions, but that feedback loop of like, I'm going to give this my 100% effort. I'm going to get paid if it works, so I can take it seriously like it's a job. But then I'm going to get the answer sheet of all the things I missed at the end. Is like, that doesn't exist anywhere else, where you can like either something is pretend and you get an answer sheet after and you learn, or it's real and you never know what you missed. There's something magic in contests of like this, and there's like a community around it and everything. There's just something about it that I feel like is like optimized for fast learning if you're the type of person who can like really learn from your mistakes. And so I don't think I would have been able to like get up to speed with this stuff quickly if it wasn't for that environment where it was just like, every week I'm getting a report of like, hey, that thing you did last week, you sucked. And like, here's all the things that you would have done to not suck.
Yeah, the feedback loop. What I didn't like about doing my one contest, but it never really appealed to me because I looked at it like, okay, there's probably some bugs here. I could probably find something, but I didn't feel that anything was on the line, because usually it's launched when, before they go live. And I just thought like, so what, man? People are going to find some bugs. Great. who cares? Because I want to see money just waiting to be stolen for whatever.
Yeah,
That was
I
my
feel like
weird kind of like, that's why I like doing the bounties.
yeah, I imagine. I mean, I've had like little tastes of that, and there's an addictiveness to it that I don't think can really be. I don't know if you can go back once you've got a lot of that. I will say with contests, it kind of shifts once you find a few unique highs in contests, and you're like, this was the last. This was like the final exam. Like this thing was going live next week with this thing if I didn't find it, but it's not the same as like codes. Like funds are vulnerable right now. I need to like adrenaline filled email them and figure the hell out what's going on. And
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if we could talk about this, but this was, it is a different style. Like, I think I always think I have a different style than other guys because for me to sit on 2 weeks on a contest is fucking hard, right? To just sit on that and just go through every single thing and really dive deep. Occasionally I do that on some projects that really reel me in, but for the most part, I'm all over the chain. And this is how I found the one in what's the betting one? Polymarket. And we talked briefly, and you were like, you told me you went so deep on this thing, like you're down in the bytecode.
Well, what's crazy is I only had, so this was one of my examples last year of like, okay, I'm going to block a week. I'm going to keep it rock solid. I got so addicted to the first contract I looked at that I never looked at the rest of the protocol for the whole week. It was like 300 lines of code. I couldn't stop, and I was dreaming about it. Man, that thing messed me up.
Yeah.
But for sure, that event, I'm like, maybe in that case it would have benefited to go a little faster, maybe. But
well, that was one of the things that I think I was talking to 100 Proof, where I was saying, I think he was saying there's no reason, or maybe it was dead roses, but he was saying there's no reason to view the storage of a contract. And I said, you could test all you want, but you don't know how they're going to integrate this. And totally. This was one of their integrations, and they still haven't fixed it or disclosed it, but so I won't say it. But it was an integration, and so it just goes to show you, like, you never know where you're going to find these fucking things. But
totally,
that was cool. Like your technique, it took you down the rabbit hole, the wrong rabbit hole, and my technique was able to work it. But then vice versa on the next bug.
Totally. And I'm for sure more of the case of like if I looked at like the bugs I found over time, over the course of spending weeks focused on one thing, there's like a little spike at the beginning, and then there's a spike at the end. And in contests, the spike at the end is worth it because those are the uniques that no one else is finding. When I'm 2 weeks into something and I've got my head fully around it, whatever. But there's also like a revenue model that's like, if I just do all the spikes at the beginning, that's going to add up a lot too.
Yeah.
So I think it depends where you're focused, but my enjoyment is most when it's like, I'm going to pick one thing and go at it for like 3 or 4 weeks and know every detail more than the devs know it, and like see if I can,
more than the devs. What do you think that is? Like, so what's interesting is we always talk about LLMs on the podcast, and I'm thinking about, like, when we look at a contract and then we don't see anything, and then we look at it again, you keep looking at it, and then something comes to mind where you think, and you think of a creative flow or something totally different. And then it just comes to you, and we joke about it on X, just stare at the screen long enough, you'll find the bugs. Yeah. But with LLMs too, like you put the same contract into 5 different LLMs, you get different answers and different kind of thought processes. But like, is that all it takes? You just stare at it long enough, and eventually it comes to you, or you think there's something else?
Yeah, it is a weird thing because it's like once you see that, you're like, this is obvious. Wait, it took me that long to come to this. Mm-hmm. Like, come on, this is staring right at me. I don't know. I imagine it's different for different people. My experience of that is like, once there's like first pass of like the ideas that come to mind that feel kind of like pattern recognition. Like you see something and you're like, what if this? What if that? I don't actually know yet. Or like, this isn't right in every situation, but who knows if that matters? And those feel kind of like trainable. The like later, deeper stuff is like, okay, I've got this whole system model in my head. I know how every single piece should interact. And in what cases would it not? And usually if it's a big enough system, like you can't hold all of it in your head at the same time. And so there's some quirk there of saying like, if I hold on to some idea of something that's off and then walk around this like mental area while holding that and saying like, what could this misbehave with? that's the kind of thing where like once it's obvious, it's like, oh, these two things fit together. Of course they do. But it takes this like going over things with your brain in different states in order to end up like finding the puzzle pieces that fit together, if that makes sense.
And how do you do that? Are you a whiteboard guy? Do you talk with other guys in a team?
I don't. I mostly, I really like it's weird because it depends on like where I think the project has risks, if that makes sense. Like I'll give you an example. I was just doing the story protocol contest, or I just did the Solidity half of it. I didn't have time for the rest, but on the Solidity half, they have a lot of different contracts that are interacting, like jump back and forth, doing validations in different places. And so in that kind of context, it's like, where is somebody who's building a code base like that screwing up? Probably what's happening is like, it's unlikely that they're seeing the state of everything holistically at every moment. Because it's like, they're jumping here, checking something, changing something here, whatever. And so my mindset through that was a lot of like, let's treat the entire protocol as one contract in my head and map out what's all the storage of the entire contract. And then literally like whiteboard or sometimes even like Google Sheets, just messiness, go through saying like this one entry point, what is it doing if I think of all of this as one contract? And once I see that, it's like, oh, well, wait a minute. This thing that's setting something is touching in this way. This thing that's reading it is touching in this other way. Maybe they don't totally line up or whatever else. So like in some cases, it's kind of like rethinking everything as a state machine and trying to get my head around like, where does that bigger state machine misbehave? And then other times I find myself trying to like think from the perspective of like, what are the things that could go wrong? And can I definitively prove to myself that they're not possible? And this is what got me on the poly market thing, man. Is like, I got down this thread where I was like, if this fact is true, it is steal every dollar in the protocol with one click. And I can't prove to myself that this thing isn't true. And so I was just trying to get myself to leave it alone for the whole week. But yeah, I kind of like that avenue of being like, okay, if you were able to steal money here, why? It's because you would have to have this fact be true. And to make that fact true, you'd have to do this and kind of like work back to say like, okay, I know that that's like an impenetrable fortress, at least for that line of thought. So yeah, I think it kind of depends on the context. I think it's like so much of this stuff is personal and it's just like, if I'm engaging with this thing as like some kind of state machine that I want to behave in a certain way, like where does it feel off? And where do I feel like I need to push or prod or that it doesn't feel tight in the way that it should? I don't know. I don't have a good answer for translates to English.
No. Yeah, I know it's hard to translate your technique because everyone's got their own method. Do you take it offline at all? Do you use the printer?
I have never used the printer. I will like move to a whiteboard and not look at my screen for long periods of time.
Yeah.
Printer is. I could see the appeal. I
haven't done it in a long time. People gave me shit because I said I did back in the day, but honestly, that was like that's when you're first learning, and it really helps you learn. I think to just look
I can
at
see it, man. And like I don't know, I used to when I was in the book business, like editing books. There's
that's
a different
right.
kind of editing you do when you print it off and write on a page than when you do on the screen. Like you're missing
just
a lot
like in school, right? Print it out, you see all the errors. That's strange how that works too. Maybe it works with Solidity. Bug hunters, there's a tip.
Yeah, you get that impulse, right? I imagine you had this printed out where you're like, oh, I got to reach for this page. Like I know this connects to something over here.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's better than like jumping to the right destination in VS Code with a few buttons, but like there's something different. And I feel like, I don't know, what's weird in this space is like different can be more important than good because you're not looking for the best bug. You're looking for the best bug that no one else has found. Mm-hmm. And so like if everyone's thinking the same way, it doesn't matter if that way is better, because if you're thinking a way no one else is thinking, then there's stuff that's left that only you are going to be able to find. So like, I think there's value in just doing weird stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think is like the holy grail for you with bug hunting? Like, is it finding a whole new class of bugs or one class of bug that you could say, hey, Bront found this, just some strange pattern or something completely original? Like, what would you say would be yours?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the stuff I find fun. I don't know if I have a holy grail as much as like it. I find like there have been a few times where I found a bug pattern that feels like, oh, this could exist in other places, and then I just lose interest. Like I've had a few examples of this where it's like, oh, I find something, this could be everywhere, and it's like, I hope so. I don't know, maybe there's a thing I found in Open Zeppelin that was like, could be vulnerable. I'm like, can you guys just tell everyone, like, I don't need to be going through the chasing down. Like, the thing that's fun is the creativity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if I get a chance to do that and have big ahas and like satisfying things that feel original and creative, then I'm happy.
Yeah. If it feel like when you're deep in the code and you're thinking, no one's thought like I'm thinking right now. There's no way. I'm totally original.
I'll tell you this Polymarket thing.
It's really on you.
Like, should I say it? Well, no, the reason it's on my mind beyond that we just talked about it is actually, I'm not going to say it because I still haven't completely convinced myself. And if I say it,
no, keep it hidden. Yeah, that's right.
No,
somebody will dig into it.
I'm never going to find it. I've given up on this quest, but if I
their code is,
I'll feel really bad.
If you haven't looked at Polymarket's code out there listening, look at it. It's very unique. It's interesting, and it's very good. I'd say it's a pretty tight code base, but it'll have you thinking quite a bit. Like, it's a cool code base.
Yeah, I'll cut it off there. But it's
don't look.
It haunts me. It haunts me.
So real quick on your Chainlink bounty. So that was I read you didn't even really do a write up, dude. That's sad. I saw just like an article.
Yeah, they wanted to publish things in their own way. I'll say that.
Yeah, I hear you. But what I got from that is, so they said that, okay, hey, this is a bug. Yeah, we admitted it. And it allowed a VRF subscription owner to re-roll the randomness until they got whatever value they wanted, which is really cool. But they kind of negated that. They're like, oh, it required subscription owner, which is a role typically controlled by the team behind the dApp using the VRF. Must be malicious or compromised. Okay. So not saying it's not a valid bug. It is a valid bug. What I'm saying is this is kind of a vector that I think some bug hunters don't look at, are permissioned attacks. Because there's something that's like,
and I wouldn't usually, it's like, because like I feel like people do that in contests. It's like, well, yeah, but you're trying to help this team. Yeah,
right.
Like, sure, you shouldn't put too much on a multi, whatever. But it's like, this isn't a bug. In this case, the reason it's a bug is because, I mean, we were like pulling ads and stuff to show them, like, you can find ads that Chainlink runs. That's like, if you use a casino that uses Chainlink VRF, you don't have to trust the casino.
Ooh.
Like, they're not this isn't that a protocol owner is malicious, so that protocol has a bug. This is, you're providing a service so people don't have to trust the protocol owner, and in fact, they do have to trust the protocol owner. So that's like, if you trusted the protocol owner, you don't need VRF at all. You can find, they could inject their own randomness or whatever. I think the purpose of it is that it's not gameable, and so it was breaking the like core purpose of what this service was for, and it was specifically listed on Immunify that any manipulation of randomness, no matter what, was a critical. So those things made me say it's like more serious versus like, I would never really look at like, hey, your own team could steal funds from your users. They're like, fuck off, we're not going to.
No, I hear that, but I mean, so say like validators, like staked validators, like say like Polygon, the original where you had all the validators staked. Yeah. Okay, they have capital staked, and I don't think they were all KYC'd. Maybe they were, but still, you had I don't know how many millions or billions were in the bridge.
Right.
But if you found an exploit where it just took a compromised validator, it's like, well, capital risk and possible reward. I think that's completely valid to say that some guy would risk his $100,000 stake for 500 million. Totally. No shit. But a lot of people won't look at it. They see only validator, only owner, and they just fuck it. But it could be legit.
Yeah, it's totally the case. Especially some of these things where like, I feel like one of the trickiest things is when a protocol is audited with one set of those trust assumptions and then tries to decentralize, and it's like the people who looked at it earlier were discarding that. The new people are just looking at that change and maybe don't have their head around the whole thing as well. So like, I feel like there can be some mismatches when a protocol says like, oh, we're going to make this shift, and it's like, you're not considering all the old bugs that were invalid that are now all about to show up.
Yeah, that's good. That is good. Yeah, and you also have different levels of, like, think about this. So you have the contest where you'd highlight all these different bugs. Centralization of ownership, all these things. Then you'd have the bug bounty, and then you have the rules with the bug bounty too, just like you said with Chainlink, this and that. And then you have the third class, which is the white hat rescue, should we say.
Right.
And, well, then, I mean, then everything's on your terms, right? And there's no rules. And, then you're walking on that gray line. But that's like, I mean, like it or not, those are the three kind of tiers that bugs are going to be on and how they're going to get exploited versus protected. And I just thought that was
what's interesting is like in that only validator case. It's like on the one hand, you could argue, hey, someone could get in to be a validator. On the other hand, if someone just becomes a validator and steals it and rescues it, it's an interesting dynamic where it's like, I don't know. I think you see this in traditional cybersecurity sometimes, where there are things that you can't prove unless you do the evil deed, right? I'm actually pretty strongly against the white hat rescue stuff. I think I get the pull towards normalizing it in that it probably will increase the amount of funds returned to users, but I don't know. I do this because I'm on the team side. I wouldn't fuck around with that kind of thing. But I do think there's an interesting dynamic where there is a type of bug. As an example, it's a team puts a multi-sig that controls $8 billion that's on the chain. From North Korea's perspective, they're like, if we can get the private keys to that multi-sig, we steal $8 billion.
Yeah.
But no white hat can look at it or try to work on it, because working on it means whatever you have to do to steal from those people, right? And so I think there's a whole class of thing that we're not protected against, because
that's full spectrum security. Methods. Yeah, we just look at one.
But those things bump into each other, It's
absolutely.
And so I think as our world gets more developed, there's this missing gap that I think is gonna haunt more and more projects, is the more traditional OPSEC.
Yeah, I still think there's a big market for that. If you want to go full security, including Web3, breaking and entering in the house, right. We're hacking the devs, everything. I mean, God, there's so much money around here and so many vulnerabilities and so many kids on the blockchain and just so many people it's shocking, man. Go to a crypto conference and just glance at somebody's screen and, I don't know different people's backgrounds, but I take a very conservative security approach. I don't even install extensions in my browser. I'll have a separate browser for that. I'll do split tunneling on a VPN. I use different laptops, all these things. And most people, man, you open up their browser, they have 65 extensions. You don't know what's involved with that. It's like these guys are devs behind your favorite project.
Right. Yeah. It's I think I'm glad to see more awareness of this and more talking about the hey, don't click a malicious Zoom link that someone hit you up with on Twitter when a letter is off or whatever stuff. I think it's easy because this space is so unique from a security perspective. I think it attracts a lot of people who are puzzle solvers without security experience. And I count myself as one of those that it's easy to get high and become good at it without knowing anything about security. And all of a sudden you're in a position where the willy-nilly VS Code extension installations, I'm if someone saw my VS Code live, I'd be in trouble. And a lot of projects would be in trouble, I'm making notes of I could steal everything here, we'll come back to it later.
Yeah. It's recording everything, logging. What about so if something at your house broke, would you take it apart and try to fix it?
Depends what kind of thing. I have a fantasy of being more of an electrical engineering understanding. I don't know a ton about that stuff. I try my best.
Do you try to fix it? If something electrical breaks, do you fix it? Or attempt?
Maybe loosely attempt. I don't know, it depends on what. Not a whole lot.
It's interesting because you painted yourself as a puzzle solver. And I'm thinking how I contrasted that. I would say maybe I like the challenge of figuring out how things work. I would take apart my floor heating system, I just did 2 days ago, just to see, try to fix it and do all that stuff. But to me, I'm I kind of like puzzles. I think they're frustrating sometimes, but I more think about how I love to see the inner mechanics of a device or a system and just kind of try to break it, to be honest.
Can I ask you something though? Where did that start? Where, especially with physical systems?
Oh, as a kid. just taking shit apart. I was that guy taking shit apart and trying to put it back together unsuccessfully.
Interesting. Because I feel like there's an interesting thing there where it's like, okay, I find the puzzles of blockchain security really interesting. But if 5 years ago you just showed me a contract, I'd be like, this is just a bunch of words, it doesn't mean anything. And I needed the context and understanding to see, to like know what it was even being asked of me and to know what to do with it. And that's kind of the feeling I have with a lot of physical systems, where I'm like, I feel like I'm missing a baseline knowledge to be able to treat it as a puzzle, or to be able to even like reason about it. And that's probably bullshit. Like, probably if I spent a little time, then I'd find it fun. But I have like a distance from it where I'm like, I don't even know where to start, so it doesn't seem as interesting.
Do you do Sudokus on the flight?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, not that side.
Yeah, different kind of puzzles.
Yeah.
Yeah, me neither.
I think it's the same thing. It's like there's like a like novelness that I need, and like any kind of like puzzle in a book isn't that, right? It's why we're all addicted to this stuff. It's
it's
brand
true.
new every day, high stakes. It's there's nothing like it.
All right, I want to ask you, because you're the king of the op stack, as far as I know, who places number 1 with a couple $100,000 in his pocket. I got to compliment you on that. I was very impressed. So
which one?
On Optimism.
On Blast.
Yeah.
Oh, Optimism. Yeah, and then
well,
Blast.
Yeah, that's true. So you hit Optimism first, then Blast, right?
Yeah, I came first in both of those, and then I did a private audit for Base, private audit for Fractal. I did OP Succinct, which took me way deeper. I actually lead Optimism's developer advisory board, so like I've ended up deep in and actually like my funniest Optimism thing was I was in the governance forums, kind of like spring of last year, and they posted they're going to do this fault proof update. So they're going to change to fault proofs, but with a ton of safeguards. And then they did a safeguard audit with Sherlock and found that like safeguards are solid. Like, even if it's exploited, they know how they are able to undo it. So they say, okay, we're going to do the upgrade. And I'm like, I get that the safeguards are good, but guys, like, audit the actual thing before you deploy it. Like, I don't think there's really a risk of anything going wrong here, but like, it's just a bad look if there's bugs in it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some back and forth, and basically decided like that, well, they're going to deploy it, and there's audits coming, whatever. And I was like, I went to governance. Basically, it was like, will you fund a grant for me to go run a contest and administer it? Like, you guys don't have to touch it, but like, I want this stuff to be safe. And to their credit, like, they funded a good sized pot, and I just independently went to C4, ran a contest, judged it, and some people found some amazing epic stuff. And there were like multiple high severity things that they then like patched really quickly. So like everyone was safe the whole time, but I was like, we need the fastest, like, good security researchers doing that. And Spearbit was doing one in parallel, a private audit on it. So like, yeah, I've seen this from the perspective of like, pretend I'm on the OP Labs team running a contest, doing contests and winning them, on the developer advisory board, building the ZK. So like, somehow, without intending to, I've gotten deep in that world. Yeah.
But looking at doing the Optimism contest was your first foray into their code.
Totally. Yeah.
And why did you pick that? Complexity?
It had a big pot, and Sherlock offered me to be the lead. So I said, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And wasn't a lot of thought.
So this is interesting. And this is kind of some alpha thing, and a good tip for bug hunters, because I think I noticed a strategy, right? So if you're bug hunting a project and you're looking at it, you're so deep in the code, you know the code very well. And then say you find a bug, whatever. But if that project then launches a contest, go make some fucking money and go do the contest. So do what Obron did here with Optimism, and then basically Blast forked it, right? What do you feel like your advantage was coming into the Blast contest?
Okay, I had one massive advantage. I had just been on a month of paternity leave and was itching to get back and to go so hard. And so like, I was like fully, recharged in the sense that like I hadn't slept in a month, but recharged in that like my brain was wanting hard work. And so I blocked the full 3 weeks, like to your point, like we were like jumping in and out, I canceled every meeting. I was like, if I'm doing this, I'm winning it. Even to the point that like, I love some friends who I really love working with were like, do you want to do it together? And I was like, I'm going to win either way. So there's no point partnering because I'll just make less. I was set on it. I'm going to win it. I already knew all the optimism stuff, so I was able to really focus on the differences. And yeah, I'd say that was really it. It was just like I hit it with intensity of like, I'm coming to win this contest, not like, let me poke around and see what I find. And so like I went into it with the thought of like, any single thing I miss, why the fuck would I miss it? I'm good at this. I have maximum focus, and I know the baseline. It's inexcusable for me to miss one bug. And so that was kind of like the mindset I had through the whole thing. And towards the end, I actually, like with 2 days left, was like, I'm out of ideas. Here's a little possible alpha. I guess I maybe shouldn't say this on a fucking podcast, but who cares? 2 days left, I was like, I have no more ideas. Like, what other creative things can I do? I was thinking, I'm like, I think I've exhausted every idea. So I took a ton of mushrooms and just stared at it for a whole day and did find one more bug. I squeezed one more out of it.
That worked. What was the dosage?
It worked.
Actually,
it wasn't a large
macro
amount.
dose?
In between. So I know the whole like microdose thing of like changes like the whatever, but like it's imperceptible. I want it to be like high drawing connections, not like my brain is slightly rewired. So I think I took like 1.5 grams, like too little to be like on the floor tripping out, but too much to pretend that nothing was happening. And basically like,
that's interesting.
I went to a room that I know of that has like a 20-foot long whiteboard and wrote out the entire map of the protocol, everything connecting. And then I just paced back and forth staring. I paced back and forth staring at it, then went outside and went on a 3-hour walk where I didn't think about it, and then came back and paced for 2 more hours thinking about it. And all the parts of that were glorious. I had a really fun day.
This is serious bug hunting alpha.
Yeah,
I tried that in the past, and it didn't work out. The screen just tripped me out. It's too bright.
Yeah, I feel like there could be more honing to do it well. I haven't done it again since, but yeah.
Hey, whatever works, man. I mean, we use caffeine. Some people don't use caffeine, nicotine. Some people smoke weed. Look at the code. I think whatever opens up those pathways.
And again, it's the same thing we were saying before. It's like, if you told me like, hey, you're the only person auditing this, look at it. I'm like, I'm not going to fuck with things. I want to be the most. And this is a weird different thing in security is like, there's kind of 2 very different ways of thinking, types of people. There's like airline mechanic type where it's like, I'm going to checklist everything and I'm going to miss nothing. And then there's like, I'm going to miss a ton, but I'm going to find some crazy shit. And like, those are usually very different types of people. I'm definitely more the latter, but I can like try to harness the former to not screw things up. But like, if I'm trying to do an audit by myself, it's like, I'm not going to go do some mushrooms and like not be as like thorough as I can. But if I'm in a contest and I'm like, hey, if I think of something that's just fucking weird that no one else is thinking about, that's useful in a contest. They already have the like base of coverage. So I think there's like, it goes back to that, like the weirdness is kind of useful. And I think that encourages weirdness.
No, I agree, man. I think I'd say get out there, go run, go exercise. Drugs can help sometimes. Just anything.
But you also, I'm curious on the drugs for you because like, if you told me you said like you go fast through things. Like if I tried to do any drugs after looking at a code base for one day, it's like my brain doesn't know what to do with it. Like I was already like, it was like ingrained in my like brain circuits by that point that like I didn't have to look at the code once the whole day.
Yeah,
I was just thinking about it, and so it's a different place to be.
No, that's I don't think I would do that unless because I couldn't sit in front of the screen looking at it. That didn't work. So if it was already in my head, and I could think, because I do that in the shower. I think through different pathways and everything. So I could see that. So if you already went through the code base,
you've got to be deep enough that it's like you don't even have to look. You know how every single thing is working already.
Yeah.
Maybe I should go back to Polymark. Look at that 200 lines again.
I think we should do the alpha drop. I need a sound effect for the alpha drop. That'll be the next time.
Yeah, you do.
All right, I'll drop my alpha, and then hopefully you could drop some alpha here. Because I want to ask you about what I texted you about on what people could look for in the op stack on these forks.
Oh yeah.
All right, that'll be your alpha drop. All right, my alpha drop is probably simple, but these are things that I actively find still today, and I think simple bugs are out there everywhere. Remember, I underestimated it last time. I think I ChatGPT'd it. We got millions of contracts deployed on the blockchain, and now there's multiple chains. They're everywhere, so there's no shortage of simple bugs. couple things that I see devs kind of miss over and over again are look for a function that, watch the whole trace and look for down there in the trace that where they've ignored the arguments. The arguments have been commented out. So the initial call, you needed whatever argument, and then 4 functions down, it's overridden, and then they've commented out that argument. So you never even needed it. So check for overrides. And then another one is check for for loops with continues that can break out of that for loop sooner than you think based upon a condition. Those I've had multiple bugs around those. So that's my alpha drop. I wanted Zach to motherfucking alpha drop. I wanted Zach to talk about, since he's the op stack master, and you see a lot of these forks. What kind of mistakes can bounty hunters look for when these are getting deployed by devs that might not know the whole code base, the nuance, low hanging fruit, any of that you could share?
Yeah, I was thinking about it before. So I guess there's 2 things I'll share. One is on the Geth side. I think if someone hasn't spent a lot of time with Geth, it can be kind of intimidating. Like, big code base, things are pointing all over the place. Lots of it's not used. It's not used in the flow that you were looking at. And what you'll find if you go deep in it is like there's only a few areas that matter for EVM related stuff at all. Like, you can basically trace from when a transaction is pulled from a block that's being processed, and from there how the gas is charged, how the check for enough balance, how the actual EVM calls work. So there's like that world, and then there's how the state database is managed. And basically those are the only 2 areas. And if you include in the first one precompiled,
which Go files are those?
So it's like state processor. It's core /VM/ I think like state processor.
Knows the path.
Yeah, of course, man. Type this shit up too many times. Contracts.go is all the precompiles. And then StateDB, if you search, you'll find it. Those, every OP Geth fork, that's where the changes are made. And for the most part, or not for the most part, a lot of the changes from Geth to OP Geth are in those as well. And so, I don't know, I found like, at first I was like, well, I'm not going to understand all of Geth. I'm just going to look at this. And then I realized like, no, I should understand all of that set of things. And that will open things up a lot. Like Blast made changes to the state database. Okay, I'm immediately thinking like, I know how the journal works of where state changes are made and then reverted. Are they handling all those reverts properly? Are they doing things out of order? Are there situations where you could self-destruct, but then it would skip the revert? Like there's, you can start to know those pieces with a level of depth that's like a thing you're actually familiar with. Whereas Geth as a whole is just like helpless to feel like that. So that's one thing, is like knowing that set of things really, really well.
So just to rehash for the listeners, so that's just if you can get those contracts.go, state tree is that .go as well?
I would go to state, I think it's state processor, and there's a function called process, and that's literally take a block and execute all the transactions. Just following that through all the way and looking at everything that touches, you will be in good shape.
Okay.
And then on the contract side, you were just talking about the like overrides and inheritance. I think the Optimism bridge is pretty simple, except for 2 things. One, there's a weird quirk where basically when you're doing withdrawals, the initial withdrawal is not replayable if it fails. And then that goes into like a wrapper contract called the cross-domain messenger that handles all the replay. And so anytime I'm looking at any Optimism thing, I'm thinking like, is there a way to make withdrawals fail? So before they hit the cross-domain messenger so that they can be wasted. Because I can process your withdrawal for you and brick it. And that's in the original Optimism contest I did, both of the highs, or I guess all 3 of the highs. That was the core bug, was like different ways to brick other people's withdrawals for free. So that's like one thing to pay a lot of attention to. And then the other thing to pay attention to is it's hard to get your head around the bridge because they've got this like mirror image on both sides. So like there's a standard bridge contract, or say there's a cross-domain messenger contract, and then it's imported into the L1 version and the L2 version. And sometimes they override things and sometimes they don't. And like, it can get hard to get in your head, like, what is this one contract doing, without trying to do the like, don't repeat yourself dev stuff of kind of combining code. And so I find it useful to just like, for each of those contracts, kind of reorganize it so it's actually just what is actually in this contract. And for Optimism, it's fine. Like I've done it enough times. There's this all solid. But when there start to be changes, you would start to notice like, okay, the L2 one overrides this thing, but they don't realize that another thing in the underlying is calling that function, and now it's not going to behave. So I would take everything in the bridge and split it into like, what are these contracts actually doing, as opposed to trying to use the shared code. Yeah, the one other thing I'll say is like interop is coming very soon. So that's like instant interoperability between OP stack chains, starting with a smaller base and growing that cluster over time. And that's like a fascinating area for new creative bugs that like they're working hard on. I'm actually in the middle of auditing it right now, or at least auditing the contracts. But I think like getting ahead of that and understanding that system, there are going to be a lot of app layer bugs by teams misusing interoperability. So that's like
Is that GitHub public? Is that under Bedrock or something else?
Yeah, it's under just like their Optimism monorepo. I think there's if it's
OpStack
not
to
on the main
OpStack.
branch.
Cool. Yeah, who knows what that opens up?
It's immediately like very, very cool opportunities for things to build with it, and also a lot of gotchas that devs will get wrong, I'm sure.
Did you ever look at Arbitrum?
I've never looked at Arbitrum.
Not once. Interesting.
Yeah. So much of what I know is based around like just how the calendar worked itself out. I'm interested in it and like have planned to look into it a few times, but when there's just other priorities that come up, it's like it's kind of coin toss whether it happens or not.
Yeah, I mean, look at the momentum Optimism has had with this the superchain, OpStack. There's so many forks of it, and then with Arbitrum, I don't think maybe now there's a couple, but I mean, tell me who forked it, because Optimism just ran away with it, I think, and I don't know why. I don't know.
Yeah, I would guess that's a mix of. I don't know what it is. I mean, I think they've like worked hard on how they express the vision. They've worked hard on the biz dev. They've worked hard on some of these like the only reason for all of it to exist is honestly this interoperability, right? So like they've been planning this for a long time. It's like there's a reason to be in one stack besides the other if they both do the job, because one of them you get to exchange with OP mainnet and base and now Unichain and Sony in 1 second, and then the other one you don't. Like I think there's like network effects from that. I have heard ZK Sync is doing a good job with that model as well, of like being the stack for others to build on, but I haven't looked at that either.
Yeah, this is cool seeing where all this evolves. I want to ask you, what is your end game in this industry? Do you have one?
Dude, who knows? I'm every day is a battle to convince myself to not start a company. So at some point I will give up on that battle.
You mean you're gonna start a protocol? What are you gonna do?
Who knows? I think there's a ton of interesting opportunity and cool things to build, and I'm having so much fun with this current form of work, and especially with 3 young kids, it like jives well with it. I enjoy it a lot, but there's for sure a part of me that misses like grow a thing really big and take it seriously and be committed to it for a long time. So I suspect at some point something that I feel like needs to get built that no one's building, I'm gonna just give in and do that. But who knows what that'll be?
Yeah, I hear you. Well, dude, awesome. Thank you for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure. I think some serious alpha was dropped here. The great zachobront.
Great chat with you, dude. It was fun.
All right, man. Thanks. Take care, brother.
Later.